Growing up in my childhood home was a treat. There was woods to play in and a creek at the very edge of the backyard filled with creatures and muck and relics from its past life as Boy Scout camping grounds. My 3 siblings and I, ages 6 to 16, used to run freely through the woods, bathing by the sunning banks of the creek in summer in swimwear, playing hide-and-seek by the campfire in autumn with other children. We loved it. I particularly loved being out in nature and would spend long hours sitting out in the woods very still and watching things come to life around me. Birds, squirrels, frogs. I trained myself to be drawn to their movement so I could spot them and learn more about them. Wintertime always meant life coming to a chilling standstill, and there was much less to see in the unforgiving tundra. When going outside was so cold that the snot freezes in your nose, you are much less inspired to spend much time outdoors. And as a 13-year-old girl just discovering boys could be cute instead of irritating, I was spending more and more time on my pink Razor cell phone. Sitting on a chair in my parents' bedroom, chatting to one of my guy friends as I am watching dusk fall upon a snowy January woodscape, I spot movement very far away, all the way to the creek. It is not an animal. My friend asked if I had been listening to him since I stopped responding. I told him that I think that there is a man in my backyard. He is heavily wrapped up and booted to traverse the scathing conditions, but he is not walking. He is standing by a tree facing my parents' large windowed house. I heard my siblings running and laughing in the festively lit living room next to me. As I peered out the window of the dark room, my friend asked what the man is doing, and we are both giggling. This situation seems a bit ridiculous. He's just staring at my house like a total weirdo, and I liked it to The Shining when Jack chases Danny through the snowy maze just off his tits. He didn't look like he had any hunting gear with him. Just a small plastic bag in hand, contents unknown. I carried on with my conversation and kept an eye on him as he stared catonically at my house for a quarter of an hour. Then again, movement triggers my attention as the man sets his bag on the ground and begins to take off his coat and gloves. I am definitely interested in what's going on now. It's far too freezing to surrender any layers this time of year. Next, the pants come down, and I am incredulous. Could he be that desperate for a piss? My friend is no longer laughing on the other end of the phone and asks me to describe to him exactly what is happening. Well, he's got his thing in his hand, and he's, I don't know exactly what the fuck he's doing. Like, making a dance. My friend asked if that means that it looks like he's jiggling his dick, and I confirmed. He told me to alert my parents and have them call the police right away. I hung up with him and did just that. The police showed up, and upon sight the man took off. The man was chased through the woods and dove into the far below freezing creek waters in an attempt to flee. This successfully evaded capture momentarily, but he was later identified, a 50-something-year-old man with the mental capacity of a 12-year-old. Intellectual disabilities are a valid behavioral explanation, but this man also has a record. A long record of watching, stalking, and, in one instance, running over and tackling a 9-year-old girl on her family swing set because he wanted to play. He was under the care of his brother, but was encouraged to leave the house as much as possible to roam freely, which he did, walking up to 17 miles a day through neighborhoods and playgrounds. He knew where children played and where they lived. My parents learned all of this when his brother came over to our house to explain why I testified in court against the man. His house would have been labeled as the residence of a sex offender, which is not great. He apologizes for his brother's jerking off to their house full of children, but again, needed to protect his own interest. When it came to testify in court, I was in the room with the prosecutor and my father. The prosecutor was aware the brother had made a trip to our house and confirmed the sexual activity and went to take a statement from them. Several minutes later, he re-entered the room and let us know we did not need to testify, as although the brother had vehemently refused any sexual disorder took place, he proceeded to state that the man had an upset stomach, needed to use the bathroom, and removed his pants to do so, which is almost likely what was seen. I guess, in the eyes of the law, indecent public exposure is indecent public exposure, and it's actually better to shit your pants than become a sex offender. However, I will never forget my first live-action tutorial of masturbation, something that at 13 I had heard about in theory but never pictured or seen. It wasn't stomach pain relief this man was seeking, it was sexual relief. In the midst of the freezing January winds, right where that red mark is in the woods, nothing has ever creeped me out more. I have been thinking about this story a lot. I had a nightmare about it recently, and after telling it to my boyfriend for the first time, he said that maybe writing about it will help. I often do write to cope with things, so I figured I might as well get a little karma out of my story. So, this story takes place 10 years ago. I was 14 at the time. I grew up on an old farmhouse far out on a rural road. Cornfields surrounded our home, and our closest neighbors were 2 to 3 miles away. The closest town was maybe a 15-minute drive. One thing that was really nice about living out there was that you didn't get a lot of strangers knocking at your door to either sell or talk religion with you, but we did get a few. One night, it was just my mother and I home making baked goods for a fundraiser for my little brother's Boy Scout troop. Dad and brother were out helping my uncle with some cows, if I remember right. We were bustling around the kitchen, talking and laughing. Mom and I always have been close, so we heard a knock at the door, just a normal, average knock. Mom hummed to herself and took off her dish gloves to open the door. I stood at the kitchen island, rolling out some dough for a couple of pies, but also watching my mother go to the door. I had a slight feeling of anxiety in my stomach, but chalked it up as being one of my normal flurries. As my mom walked towards the door, the person on the other side gave another tap, this time in a rhythm. Tap, 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 tap. My mom stopped. She turned and started walking back into the kitchen with a look on her face. She went to our kitchen window that faced out towards our porch. She went to the side where you'd be able to see the porch clearly. My mom pulled the curtain back just enough to peek and not to be noticed from the outside. The look on her face deepened. She went to the other side of the window then to look out at the driveway. I had stopped what I was doing altogether at this point, deciding that the pie crusts probably weren't important in this moment, as the feeling in my stomach was a fully blown fury. Mom's eyes widened as she looked out. She closed the curtain and looked at the floor. The look on her face was angry, but also scared. She walked over and grabbed my wrist. She walked us to the closet, and as she quietly asked me if I had my cell phone, I did. She pulled out my dad's prized Louisville Slugger out of the closet. The person at the door started banging the door hard. I gasped a bit. Mom looked at me and shushed me. She then took my arm again and walked me towards my parents' bedroom, locking doors and windows as we went. At one point, she stopped at a window in our living room and peeked out of it. She closed it quickly and let out a frustrated noise. We got to the bedroom and she pulled me in and locked the door. She took my phone and began dialing as she gave me the bat, sat me down on the floor on the side where I'd be hidden from the door, and opened the closet to get the gun case. She talked quietly in the phone. I was terrified and couldn't focus on what she was saying. She pulled out my dad's shotgun and loaded it quickly. I looked at her scared as she hung up. She pulled me up again and walked me out of the bedroom. We crept back over to the other side of the house where the bathroom was. Mom gave me my phone and ushered me inside. You need to listen to me. There are some men outside and they're walking around the sides of the house, Mom said. I looked at her with wide eyes. I could feel myself shaking. Why? What do they want? I don't know, but you need to stay in here, lock the door, and don't come out until I tell you to, understand me? I nodded, and she squeezed my shoulders. I'm going to barricade the door from the other side. I will not move the barricade until I let you know that it is me. I understood what she was saying immediately. Crawl out the bedroom window and run if it is moved otherwise. Mom then shut the door, and I quickly locked it. I heard her move the quilt chest in front of the door, a very heavy box with lots of quilts from over the years. I sat on the floor in front of the window, clutching the baseball bat. I sat there for what seemed like hours, but was actually 5 minutes. While I sat there, I heard footsteps outside the window. 2 deep voices quietly talking. You sure they're in there? Maybe. Nobody's home. No, there's at least 2 women here. I heard them talking at the door. Saw a guy and a kid leave when we passed a house earlier. I shivered and started to hyperventilate, but quickly covered my face with a towel to mute it. Who were they? What did they want? Why were they here? Soon I heard another voice. Guys, let's go. Charlie spotted cops down the road. Then I heard 3 sets of feet running off towards the front of the house. I was crying at this point, tears pouring down my face. Was it over? Were they leaving? A few more minutes go by, and I hear a man's voice in the house. I started to panic and huddled into the corner of the bedroom. I heard my mom's voice on the other side of the bathroom door. Sis, it's me. The sheriff's here. They're gone. I'm moving the truck. I got up and unlocked the door and opened it to find the sheriff and my mom moving the trunk out of the way. I quickly ran into my mom's arms, and we just stood there holding each other. The sheriff said he had a few more officers chasing down the van, and that he needed to ask my mom and I some questions. My mom nodded, and we walked to the kitchen where the smell of burnt cookies was in the air. The sheriff asked us a few questions, and then I found out what my mom had seen. When she looked out and saw the man who was knocking at the door, she knew something was off immediately. He was casually dressed, gym shorts and a wife beater, not something a salesperson or people of a church would wear when coming around. So then my mom thought that maybe his car broke down or something and he was looking for help. So she looked out at the drive and saw something that made her stomach drop. There was a van in our drive parked in a way that wouldn't allow my mother's car to leave, with a man in the passenger seat and another leaning, talking to the passenger side guy. But Mom noticed that even that both were still sitting there. The van was still slightly rocking, like there were more people inside, as my mom and I were finishing up with the sheriff when a deputy walked in. He looked pale. He looked at my mom, the sheriff, and me, and the deputy said, "Sir, we are able to catch up with the van. They lost control and swerved into the ditch, actually." The sheriff said, "Any of those bastards hurt?" The deputy replied, "No, sir. They're all fine, but, we do have them in custody." The sheriff quirked an eyebrow. "There were 5 men in that van. We asked them what they were doing out here and what they walked around the house like that they did." And the sheriff said, "And what the fuck did they say?" The deputy said, "They were vacuum sales people, sir. That they were a team out trying to sell the product they made." The sheriff scoffed a bit. "Well, Jones ended up checking the van and well, what? Do we have a drug bust or something?" The deputy gulped and looked at my mom and me again, and the deputy said, "No, sir, that's not what we found at all." Then took my mom outside and told her what they found. She was horrified and came back in sobbing and holding me. After that, they phoned my dad, and he came rushing home. My other uncle, a mountain of a man, stayed the night just in case. Dad and Mom spent no expense on a home security system after that, and taught both of us kids how to shoot and load a gun. My aunt and uncle gave us one of their German Shepherd puppies as well. Mom had him trained to be an attack dog, though you wouldn't be able to tell. When not in defense, he was a dopey, lovable puppy. This still wasn't enough to settle Mom, though, and Brother and I ended up going to self-defense lessons as well. My cousins were sent with us. It wasn't until a few years later that I found out what was in the van. Coincidentally, we were making cookies and other homemade candy for a Christmas party. I finally asked my mom about it. She was shocked that I asked, but knew that I would find out eventually. So what they found in the van, they found rope, tape, burlap sacks, and even sedatives, as well as guns and what the police described as burner phones. When they had taken all the guys back, and after hours of questioning, one of them broke and said that they were having no luck in napping anyone in town, so they went out to rural areas, the closest town in a very tight-knit community where everyone watches each other's backs. This terrified me. I would never have guessed. To this day, I'm very, very careful about whom I open the door for, and I can't sleep unless I have some sort of weapon beside the table. It's really shattered my trust in other people as well. I go out and automatically assume most people are going to hurt me. My therapist is trying to help me with this. I sincerely hope that I never have to go through the situation like this again. If you are new, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, as it really helps me out. And if you are already subscribed, welcome back and thank you for subscribing.